psychotherapist Dr. Robi Ludwig is here to explain these generational gaps and how we can bridge them with our kids. Dr. Ludwig, I love this topic. First, just sort of set the scene for us. What are the sort of generational stereotypes, if you will, in terms of parenting?
So these are sociological kind of tendencies, right, based on when we grew up. And Gen X grew up as latchkey kids, and so they felt a little underparented, and that's why they tend to embrace a more helicopter, very involved in every aspect of their kid's life.
And they would be what, like 40s, 50s now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly right. And so these kids, although they felt very protected and safe, sometimes have a hard time being independent. So the goal is really to raise your kids so they can be more independent-minded and feel good about themselves. Because if you're dependent and relying on someone else, you can't feel like a full-fledged adult.
What about millennials? What's their style?
So millennials are very positive in their approach. They're the first generation to have a smaller amount of kids, so they have 1 or 2 kids, and also are able to have families without getting married. So it's a very different tendency, and they care, they're curious, and they want to expose their kids to everything, which is wonderful. It works out great for many kids, but other kids feel this kind of decision fatigue and paralysis.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
So when you look at the different generations and how they're raising their kids, what are your tips for ways to engage with your kids and do a good job?
So I think it's basically listening to your child and really deciding, because you become a different parent for each child, because each child has a different temperament and character, and it's being attuned and making sure that there's more of a connection than a correction. You want to make sure that your child knows that they can turn to you for whatever their needs are. And we always have the advantage of advice, right? There are other moms out there, there's professional help, and so we are, as we go on generationally, are seeing that kids are raised with more mental well-being.
Yeah,
because that is the focus. Yes.
Can you tell if your parenting style is not working for your child, and if so, how can you sort of bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think if you see that your child is not doing well socially and emotionally, they can't regulate their emotions, they're not thriving in the world, and again, kids go through stages, so to understand that. So it's really a matter of figuring out how can you say things to your child that really resonates? And how can you, you become an expert in your child. And we are always learning as parents. So it's an art, and there's a lot of creativity. But if your child is thriving, then you're in pretty good shape.
And every child is different. I'm glad you reminded us of that. Psychotherapist Dr. Robi Ludwig, as always, a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And much more just ahead. Stay with us. You're watching NBC News Daily.